We are live. Welcome, everybody. Another Wine and Comics pairing show. As always, I am Dave, and today I do have my co-host with me.
I'm Dallas. I'm back in the building.
Dallas is back. He took a week and a day off after our week off last week, and we have a very special guest who we will introduce right after. Oh, and actually, I always forget to go. I have to jump over to Instagram. Make sure we are live on Instagram. We are live on Instagram. All right, now it is time, guys. Let's play our snazzy opening and get right to it. Here we go. All right, everybody. We are here with our very special guest today, Madeleine Holly Rosing. Welcome, Madeleine. How are you doing today?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And you got to be on a show that's called, Wine and Comics pairing. I mean, who's ever done that before? I mean, that's just great.
Yes,
usually
we like it. We like it. We definitely
nobody before, nobody after.
Yeah, I mean, usually think comics and beer or soda or something, but never wine. So this is nice. This is nice.
You gotta keep it classy, and look, comics are art, wine are art, beer, small craft breweries. We're getting there.
There's art form too. Yeah.
There's an art form there. There is actually, we had a special guest not too long ago. He does a zine called Blood of Gods, and it's wine and heavy metal music that he pairs together all the time. I know. And it was surprising even to us. And we're like the wine and comics people. And the number of metal music, like they're older metal music guys. Like they're the OG metal music guys. And they retired and founded wineries. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that is what they did with their retirement? But they all got into it in later years. So there is a weird lot of crossover there. Not so much with comics. We'll see. Maybe we can convince some people working in comics now to retire and open their own winery later down in life. We'll see if this takes on and catches on. But look, comics are art, wine are art. We love it. We'll see what we can do there. But everyone, we are here today to talk about Madeleine's comic, The Boston Metaphysical Society, and her special edition hardcover volume 1, which is currently on Kickstarter. You see our ticker down there. It is until April 18th. So you've got plenty of time, but it is also doing really well at this point. You are beyond funded, but at the same time, let's talk a little bit about you and about the comic, because Boston Metaphysical Society is a comic that I've been aware of for quite some time. I don't know how long it's been going on in terms of years exactly. So I would love to know, but I know that it's been on my radar for some time. And this was my first plunge into it. And it's one of those kind of like, I think some comparables in my mind are like the Miskatonic High comic, which has been, kind of a long running kind of genre history blend that is, or literary genre blend that is, for some reason I feel like they've both been some of the longest running series on crowdfunding in indie comics. So take us through a little bit. First, let's talk about you specifically. You as a writer, when did you start writing? What made you want to be a writer, and what made you fall into comics specifically?
Well, I started writing when I was a little kid, and I just loved telling stories and writing stories. And I think part of it is like, that in order to go to sleep at night, I would tell myself stories because I was just bored. And, you're a preteen and then a teenager, and you're like, your brain's exploding all the time. So that's that's kind of what I did. As far as comics, I came into comics quite late in life. My brother probably has one of the largest graded collections of Daredevil comics in the country.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
But I never got into it. I mean, superheroes were just like, whatever. It just didn't appeal to me.
If it's a graded collection, does he even read them? Because that's like they're in
not.
those little cases. And
Okay, there we go. No. He doesn't read them because I'll ask him, "Well, how's the story?" He's like, "I don't know. I like it.
It's in great condition. That's what I know.
Great condition. They're all beautiful.
Yeah.
But what happened is I had originally written Boston Metaphysical as a TV pilot when I was at
Oh yeah.
the MFA program at UCLA in screenwriting.
Hmm.
And it was suggested to me that I turn it into a graphic novel and then bring it back to Hollywood to sell it because we all know
Yeah.
executives don't actually like to read, but they like to look at pretty pictures.
That was the
As I always say,
cornerstone of our first business. That was the cornerstone of
Yes, it
our
was.
first business, by the way, Madeleine.
So we won't go into details, but me and Dallas first met, and we started a comic book literary agency here in LA for a
okay.
number of years, where we shopped graphic novel properties around to the film
Yeah.
and TV world. But it, yeah, executives, like, they'll pass your script on to their assistant to read and give them the Cliff Notes version. But yeah, they're not reading that script.
No, no,
Yeah.
I mean, as I insult all the producers out there, but that's okay. Um,
They're used to it.
No, they're just busy. We understand,
they're just
right?
busy. I understand that. Absolutely, they're busy. Uh, but so an interesting thing happened is I went back to school, learned how to write comics, and part of that process, I discovered indie comics. I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah,
And yeah, and I was kind of pissed because they were really good and no one told me about them before. So
right.
yeah, I was really annoyed. And then I wrote I adapted the TV pilot into the original 6-issue miniseries, which is what's the special edition that's up now with all the extra bonus material. And a funny thing happened in this journey. I discovered I really like writing comics and I love the indie comic creator community. And so I stayed. And in all fairness to Mike Shea at Miskatonic High, we actually never met, but we talk.
Yeah.
And we
Okay.
share stuff all the time. I've actually been on Kickstarter a lot longer than he has.
Okay.
He just keeps churning it out like one right after the other, right after the other,
Gotcha, gotcha.
and
So
I
he's
have to take.
fast. You got the slow burn thing going on
Yeah,
with
I got
yours a
the
little
slow
more. Yeah.
burn. Well, he has an artist who's just cranks it out
Yeah.
continuously, and I've been through a number of artists, which is great. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Everything ended because people just moved on, and
Right.
which is great. Uh, but yeah, I think last year celebrated our 10th anniversary. So we've been
Impressive.
Very
around for
nice.
a
Very nice.
decade and have been on Kickstarter for at
Wow.
least 8 of those years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I was like, I
Wow.
feel like I've known of this title for a long time, and like
Yeah.
long enough that I can't remember when it actually
Yeah,
began, that I was aware
yeah.
of the title. So okay, that makes me feel better, because if you were like, no, we've been around for like 3 years, I would have been like, oh my God, what
Oh,
is my
no.
life? Like, why did I think it was so long?
No, no, we've been around a long time because it took about 4.5 years to get the original 6-issue miniseries done, because that's how
Wow.
long it takes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
And then for like every year after that, brought on a new artist, Gwen Tavares, who did our 4 standalone sequels.
Right.
And then last year we did the first 2, or rather earlier this no, last year. Sorry, it all kind of blends after a while.
I know.
Um, last year brought on a new artist for Mystery at Pikes Peak, and we have the first 2 issues done of that. Uh, we're on hiatus on that because Elizabeth was in a car accident, so she's
Ooh.
Oh,
healing.
Yeah.
So that'll go forward when that goes forward.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it.
uh,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Keep going. Sorry.
yeah, it's interesting. Is Charlie Stickney from White Ash?
Hmm. Oh
Yeah.
Yes.
yes.
Oh yeah, because he's in LA too. So
Hmm.
we've known each other for a while. Um, and he even asked me one time, he says, "Why don't you contact Kickstarter?" He goes, "I think you've been one of the longest running series on Kickstarter." He goes, "You
Oh,
should go ask for data." And I think I talked to Oriana when she was head of comics publishing before she
Right.
got bumped up the ladder.
Right.
And she was gonna look into it, but never got back to me. I mean, I realize it's not that important. I was just
Right.
we were all just kind of curious, because I actually think Boston Metaphysical is probably one of the top 10 continuing series on
Yes.
Kickstarter.
Yes.
Wow.
Comics on Kickstarter really is only about a dozen years old, all told. Like,
Yeah.
I think if you really stretch it to the very bitter
Gotcha.
beginnings. And so if you're 10-ish years, I mean, and the vast majority of those early ones, you know, they're not things that kept going. Like, there were a few like huge success stories, but they were the
Oh,
out
yeah.
of the blue success
Yeah.
stories that, like, and I think a lot of them, even I remember there was this like monster baseball one that made like 6 figures out of nowhere in like the first 2
Wow.
years of comics on Kickstarter. But
Mhm.
then the creator like didn't know how to handle the fulfillment of something that
Oh,
huge,
yeah.
which was the issue. All this infrastructure, we like, even with things like backer kit and fulfillment centers, and so much
That
has
didn't exist
sprouted
yet.
up.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Right.
so I think indie creators that were like, I want to create my little indie graphic novel, which is the first I've just about ever done, and it makes 6 figures. And it wound up like kind of destroying a lot of people because it was too much success before there was enough infrastructure or knowledge, or because even now
Oh,
creators, we just share so much of
that
our experiences of like what to do, what not to do, and how to get it done. And
oh, absolutely. It could be completely overwhelming. And I think I'd done maybe my 4th or 5th Kickstarter when I wrote Kickstarter for the Independent Creator, which was a how-to book,
Right.
for indie creators. And then I did a 2nd edition. It definitely needs to be updated. It's still out there on Amazon, and all the basic stuff is completely usable now. But Kickstarter as a platform itself has evolved so much and
Yeah.
changes like every
yes.
6 months. So that
Yeah.
part of it would have to be seriously updated.
And
Um,
and
but I wrote that specifically because I was seeing, I think I'd had about 4 or 5 successful Kickstarters, but I was seeing like these wonderful projects do the crash and burn simply because people weren't ready.
Right.
And
Yep.
and this gave them the tools to, to get a foundation, lay a foundation, and then be successful on Kickstarter.
And to
Yeah.
that point, Madeline, I want to jump back here. Got a couple of questions for you. In terms of your onboarding into the Kickstarter world, what were those
Mhm.
early
Yeah.
experiences like? What was that process? What were those lessons? What were
Um,
those dust ups, those wounds?
uh, Painful, exceedingly painful.
Right.
Our first Kickstarter failed, and
Yeah.
dramatically, as they are usually do. And I say we because my husband has to live with me during all of this. Uh,
Right.
and I just didn't. I was naive. I didn't know enough how to really make this work. And our first Kickstarter, we had the first 3 issues done in the
Mhm.
6 issue miniseries. So I said, well, why don't we ask for money to finish production and printing and
Right.
finish the whole thing?
Right.
And, it
Yeah.
seemed reasonable and logical.
Right.
Uh, so we asked for 25 grand, which was a reasonable amount of money for what we were going to
Right.
do,
Of
Right.
course. Right. Right.
of
Right.
course.
Reasonable
Uh,
in terms of what you needed to use it for.
Right.
Correct.
But as a
Every
first
dollar was
Kickstarter,
justified.
a very ambitious goal. Yeah.
Very, very ambitious. Obviously we didn't make it. But
No.
what we did learn is that we got over 200 backers, had pulled in over $7,000,
Nice.
and that gave us the knowledge of what we were capable of.
Right.
And no one knew me from anything. I mean, I came
Right.
like, yeah, came out of nowhere. And so I said, okay, let's scale it down and just do an issue at a time. And so that's what we did. We did like issue 3, and then we did stretch goal for issue 4, and we relaunched like 2 months later, and we're fully funded in like a day. I mean, we
Great.
brought it down to a funding goal of like $3,000 to print, just to print
Right.
issue 3. Let's get this puppy out the door,
Right.
and um, and that's how we started building the email list too, from that
Right.
failed Kickstarter, and then just started building over the years from that. And
Yes.
we've been, yeah, we've been good ever since.
That's cool.
Fantastic.
One
Fantastic.
thing I always try. So we just did our very first Kickstarter in February, and it failed. So it came and went to 85% of the goal. So it was like, okay, nice and close, spitting distance.
Okay.
So we're rejiggering it and coming back next month in April to, kind of a relaunch. But, one of the things I always tell creators, even right now, I'm not even that experienced. And I'm a long time backer, but this was my very first attempt to actually do a campaign. But even having talked to all these creators and done my own, so many creators, when their first week isn't a rousing success, like it looks like it's going to be a struggle all the way to the bitter end, it's going to be a nail biter, they'll pull the plug only a week or two in. But as to your point where you just said you built your email list on all those backers that came from the failed campaign, and it's like, right, keep going, like do everything you can, let it ride, because every backer you get is someone you naturally get to notify, reach out to when you relaunch, when you come back. It's like, that is when you started from nothing, that is the hardest thing, because you don't really have an email list. You don't really have anyone. You've got your social media followers, but especially these days, with social media being kind of the shit show it's become in terms of marketing without paying for it, it is, and actually getting eyeballs on it. I think now it's like that first starting point. It's like, just claw every backer you can for as long as you can. And that is really where you're going to start. Even if it fails, every backer counts on those things. So
yeah. I mean, one of the things we did with the first one is I didn't cancel it until we started seeing backers pull their pledges. And the reason, and then the reason I did that is because, as you can still contact them through Kickstarter later on. And notify them. And so that's what I advise people is, even though whoop, hang on. Hey, get out here. Oh, sorry, my dog is in here. Hang on. You're stuck. You're stuck. Go, 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 go. Yeah, he almost took the cord and everything of the laptop.
I saw that.
I advise people is like, hang on until you start seeing people pull the plug. And then cancel. Right. Because I think I ended up canceling literally the day before it was going to end anyway. Right. And I see
it's
Ryan's
interesting.
Like, oh, coming to show too.
Yep, there he is. Boom, for everyone to see. Ryan will be on tomorrow, everybody. So come see Ryan.
Right.
Hey, Ryan.
He's someone I've been on his like ever since he did Sunmaker issue #1 way back when. I've been following him and talking with him. So he's a long time coming on the show. When we first launched the show a year ago, I'm like, oh yeah, and we're gonna get you on the show. And then like a year and change went by and like nothing ever worked out. So tomorrow, guys, he'll be on there. But anyway, to your point, that is cool. One thing I've also heard about people pulling the plug on Kickstarter in the very bitter end is, unless you hit a milestone or you have an announcement that is just super important in like the last 48 to 72 hours, do not send updates. Like, just let the thing ride, because almost in those final 2 to 3 days, if you send an update, people experience that backers all of a sudden they get reminded that like, oh, it's the final 24, 48, 72 hours. Let's cancel that pledge so the money doesn't get taken out of my account in case they succeed. So that's another thing I've heard about that. I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Yeah, that I don't know. Yeah, that I haven't really heard of before, but yeah, just and the other thing I did was, when I canceled, I drafted a very nice update at the end and thanked everybody and how well we did with no one knowing what we're doing. And oh, by the way, click here to sign up for our newsletter that will only tell you when we launch again. And I did that like 3 times. So 3 times in there was a way to sign up for the newsletter. And that gave us like our first 200 and somebody odd people.
Great.
That's great. Yeah. That is a good piece of advice at the end there. Yeah.
So are there any plans to update the how-to manual in the near future?
If I find time. I mean, I want to.
Yeah.
I want to, but I'm juggling so many other things at this point. Yeah, it would be tough. I always recommend
2025, people. 2025.
2025. Yeah, that'd probably be good. No, it does. It needs a good everything.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. Have you ever,
Well,
I don't think you have or would, but have you ever tried any other platform besides Kickstarter at this point in time?
I did the Indiegogo in demand after one
Right.
campaign, and I've never been back. The reason being is that I found the back-end admin for Indiegogo to be so user hostile that
Interesting.
it wasn't worth my time.
Yeah.
And also personally, it lacks urgency to it, unlike the Kickstarter platform. And I just don't have the bandwidth to spend on it. It's like when I'm
Right.
done with a campaign, I'm done. And then
Right.
we'll do backer kit later on. And if anybody wants anything else, cool, they're going to get it and
Right.
move on to the next thing.
Right.
So I want to jump around a little bit more here, Madeleine, and get back to the creative side in terms of the genesis of the actual idea.
Yes.
You said it started as a script or a pilot, was
TV
it?
pilot.
A
A TV pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was going on in your creative world? Was it just sort of a out of necessity, or where did that idea come from?
I always wanted to do like a Mulder and Scully, but back in history without all the fancy doodads we have now, technology.
Right.
And the original idea was a detective agency, man and woman. It was originally called like 1900 Detective Agency. It was, late 1800s. And a friend of mine suggested that I redevelop it in a steampunk type of world. And I'd heard of steampunk. So I went and did some research, looked at it, and decided he was absolutely right, that this would be a great setting. The time period, everything would be perfect for it. And plus, I love the genres of the supernatural and paranormal and all that fun stuff.
Fits better into the X-Files, the inspiration as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No aliens, though. I don't do aliens.
Of course. Yeah.
I have ghosts, I have ghosts and demons, but no aliens.
No,
say never say never, but okay.
No, I'm not. No,
I think she's
not
saying
Boston
never.
Metaphysical.
I think she's saying
She did say never.
Yeah, it actually wouldn't fit into the world.
Yeah.
So the way the world is, the rules of this particular world.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then I rewrote it, and it actually made the rounds and people liked it, but this was quite a while ago, and steampunk wasn't really a thing. And people just saw how much, as a costume thing, and it was expensive. But several producers said, like, I think this is going to find a home. We really like it. Obviously it's just not going to be here. And so, yeah, it ended up finding a home in comics.
Yeah.
And eventually prose. So, and audio drama. So, yeah, here we go.
Right.
Here we are.
So here we are. And is history one of those things, because you had a love for the kind of setup of something like the X-Files, and you took it even before you made it steampunk. You did know you wanted to make it historical. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is, of course, the 10-page exclusive new story that's in this special edition hardcover, which had you go even deeper into research and into technical aspects of something, which is, as much as I loved the 6-issue OG series of Boston Metaphysical Society, this 10-page story might have been like my favorite thing in the whole thing. Like, it really sings and shows the work you put into it. Is that something that you're drawn to, is like research and history and things of that nature?
I think we need to back up a little bit, because what I sent you to read is our original volume 1.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That's not what's on Kickstarter right now. And there's also a different cover.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a different cover. The original, that's why I said the original 6-issue miniseries, read as much as you want. That is in the special edition hardback, but that actually has a brand new, different 10-page story than the one you wrote, one you read, rather.
Ah, okay. I thought for sure when I read 10-page story, I'm like, okay, that thing. Great.
Yeah, that was the original 10-page bonus that's exclusive to that particular trade.
Edition.
Ah,
Okay.
got it.
Okay. Darn. And now I just fluffed it up. Is it do you still have copies of that people can get, or will it ever be reprinted elsewhere or elsewise?
I have a second printing from Source Point Press, which has a cover by Roberta Ingranata that does include that Hunter Killer.
Yeah.
Hunter Killer is in the original volume 1. And yes, that did do research. That is a prequel, obviously, to the 6-issue miniseries. The 10-pager that's in the special edition hardback is also a prequel, but a lot closer to time-wise. It's a story about a case that Samuel and Andrew are on, who you only meet briefly.
Yes.
But if you read the prose, both the anthology and the novel A Storm of Secrets, you get to see much more of Andrew and who he is.
Okay.
And only a little bit of, well, the novel doesn't have Caitlin in it, but there are you see Caitlin in 2 of the stories of the anthology Prelude, which, by the way, you can get through the Kickstarter as well.
Yes. And we will go through all the tiers, all the rewards when we go to this Kickstarter page. And just so you folks know about the 10-pager that I just sort of fluffed up and sang a little bit of praise for, it was a airship battle that was an attempt to make it like a kind of realistic, like how would this really play out given the physics and the technology and like how airships would go to battle. And it's only 10 pages, but it was like, oh, this is cool. You don't really see airship battles. Sort of, you don't see all the characters are basically going through the minutia of what their options are and how it would all play out, and then trying it out and playing it out. And that's something that a lot of the times when we get to things like airship battles in a comic or a movie, there's a lot of terminology that can get kind of like thrown out, but it's really just there for the action. And so there's a lot of gee whiz action and not a lot of, I feel like the only thing in prose books, I've read a lot of prose books where it's like pirate ship battles, which have a lot of like historical accuracy as to how like a water ship battle would go. But airships, not something I've seen before. So that was cool. And that is available in the old edition if anyone wants to try and seek that out.
It's in the it's in the one that the cover that you saw there, that's not available anymore.
Gotcha.
The second edition printing from Source Point Press is, and you can get that through my web store or me at a con, or through obviously Source Point Press, or order it through your comic book store.
Right.
But yeah, this one we're doing here is different.
And I will say, because I threw it up earlier, now I'll throw the correct one up. This is the cover for the edition that we're actually going to talk about at the Kickstarter today. So this is the new cover. This is a great cover, by the way, also. All right.
That was done by Rebecca Isaacs. She did a terrific job.
Beautiful. All right, so shall we go look at the Kickstarter page? I think since we've just been talking up the details, let's go take a look at what's available, what's going on. So I'm going to share my screen here, everybody, and find, where do I have the tab open? Oh my goodness, I have way too many tabs. Window, there we go. Boston Metaphysical. Okay, here we go, everybody. From the top, Boston Metaphysical Society, Volume 1, Special Edition, hardback. This is, as she mentioned, or as we've mentioned as well, this is set in the 1800s Boston. It is a supernatural detective agency, or it's more of a, would you still call them a detective agency, or are they more like supernatural hunters? For this
They're more supernatural hunters now. The original thought in my mind for the 1900 detective agency would be, that was it. But that that got blown up when I redeveloped the whole thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And as you can see, they're doing good. 351 backers, 21 days to go. This has only been happening for about a week and change. It's $17,000 already. So a little bit of patience. Like, she was going for 25,000 on her very first Kickstarter. Now that's, as you can see, not remotely unreasonable to try and raise something like, even though her minimum is much lower than that on this. 25,000 is very, very possible. So
2025, guys, when she dusts off the manual, you will learn the secret of how to accomplish this.
How we got here. Yes. But also longevity. Don't, never underestimate how sticking with it, because as we've been mentioning, she's one of the OG comic Kickstarter groups, the one that has outlasted everyone else to still be here and still working on Kickstarter. And that's always meaningful. That's always a big, big thing. So don't give up hope. Keep coming back, lick your wounds, learn your lessons, come back, try and be smart about it. And the one thing that always kind of blows my mind is I followed a couple of creators that, like, their Kickstarter fails and they're just like, okay, and you can fail by a large margin, and they're just sort of like, okay, and they relaunch like a week later with no changes, and I'm just like, did you want to like take a breather, sleep on it, like think of I'm sure there's things to learn here, but it's like the gumption is great, but I feel like that is when you want to take a step back and think about what just happened.
Yeah, another piece of advice I have for people is, if they do fail, don't relaunch immediately. Just like you said, I'd say give it at least a month, but no longer than 3 months, because even if you already know exactly how you're going to change it and exactly what you're going to do, it's a perception.
Yeah.
You have to give the perception that you really thought about this.
Right.
You're going to take a different approach and then come back. And you do need time to do that, but you obviously don't want to take too much time, or else people just forget you exist.
You lose momentum. You lose all the momentum. Yeah. And we do have, I think this is in response to the performance of your Kickstarter, but so impressive. Facebook user, let us know who you are. Facebook user, if you're still around. Facebook kind of sucks that way. They're a little snotty about telling us who is actually commenting. There's a little thing you can click in Facebook to let Facebook share your information, but Facebook is set up to where you have to give it permission to let us know who you are. So if not, I wonder. Okay, there it is. It's Jessica Mason.
Hi, Jessica.
All right. So getting down into the nitty gritty. Yes, we are. Oh yeah, stretch goals, and we've reached a couple of stretch goals already. So we've already got 6 awesome indie digital comics that will scare you, intrigue you, make you laugh. We also have adding an elegant gray satin ribbon. Oh, I love those bookmarks to the hardback edition. Those the ones that are just like connected to it and you just drape into. Oh, I love those things. For hardbacks especially. Those are elegant's a good word for it. I love that. So that's been and 6 more fantastic digital indie comics to add to your collection. And then foil stamping. Ooh, yes, guys, get to the foil stamping. I'm a sucker. I'm a 90s kid. I'm a sucker.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just going to look so, with this cover, it's just going to look so beautiful that I can't wait. I really want that one.
Yes. Which part do you know? Where's the foil stamping on this? Let's go down to the big image right here. Do you know? Is it like you haven't decided entirely?
We haven't decided yet. Yeah.
But there's a lot of possibilities here. I mean, whether it's the title, whether it's the lightning,
the title, the lightning, all sorts of fun stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably you can see probably a mix of both.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And this cover by Rebecca Isaacs. This is just a super freaking cool cover. And you can see all the little ghoulies in the background kind of lining up, and our pretty fearless heroes. We'll go with fearless. I was gonna say they're not a character's not that interesting if they're truly fearless, but they are, by comparison to most people, pretty fearless. So there you go. These are our main 3. Who Will Love, Boston Metaphysical Society. Yeah, fans of Penny Dreadful, Girl Genius. That's a great one. Talking about steampunk. Ruse, that's another good one. Good call out there. And then, of course, steampunk and gaslamp fantasy in general. People who like to read paranormal historical fiction and or alternate history and character-driven comics with a mix of paranormal and science fiction. These are the comics for you. Booyah. All right. Oh yeah, and this is cool. I did really like this. The metal business cards
Cards,
that you
yeah.
can get. Oh yeah. So as you can see, you can get brass, copper, and black stainless steel
Very
in
cool.
specific
Very
reward
cool.
tier levels. Yeah. 1890 special detective.
Hmm.
Very cool. And then of course, yeah, here's some interior art from these OG issues.
Yeah, this art is done by Emily Hugh.
Okay.
Emily Hugh.
Yeah, who's gone on to bigger and better.
Mm-hmm.
As
Well,
she
when you
should.
said yes, and when you mentioned earlier that like the artist changed after the first series, but of course that's I think that's the thing with indie comics though is that it's a launch pad, it's a stepping stone for a lot of
Yeah,
people, and it's like, well, you hope and want them to go on to bigger and better things, and that generally does mean they will not have the bandwidth, the schedule
Yeah.
to be able to fit you in anymore. But
correct.
that is, I think, something to celebrate, even though it's always a minor sadness that it's like, especially if you enjoyed working with them, if they were great for the series, the fans love them, all that is sad, but them going on to bigger and better things, not sad at all.
Yeah.
All right. And what's in the
Oh
volume
yeah.
1 special edition hardback?
Yeah, and this is cool. I had John Kutzer put together essentially doodles and diagrams from Granville T. Wood's
Yeah.
workshop of his various weapons. And for those of you out there who don't know, Granville T. Woods is an actual historical figure. He's an African
Hmm.
American scientist who lived
Mhm.
during the same time period of Tesla and Edison and all those
Right.
guys. And I found him in my research because in the original iteration of all this, I didn't want a lily white cast because,
Yeah.
well, that's just boring.
Yep. I was gonna say, there is a Brian Talbot has a
Mm,
relatively new-ish series. I think it's
yeah.
called Granville, and it's anthropomorphic though. And
Yeah.
Granville is like this badger character. I'm wondering now. I've never read it, but I'm wondering if it's based on this character as well. But that would
I
be
I I have not heard of it. I know Granville Woods, the actual human, was originally from Ohio, and I brought him to
Yes.
Boston because I can do that because I'm the writer.
That's right.
And
yep, yep.
he sued Edison for stealing some of his patents because,
He
well, that's
did.
Edison did that
He
to
did.
everybody.
Yeah.
Granville won.
Hmm.
Granville
Yep.
He's a
won,
fascinating
and
character that we don't hear enough about, honestly.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And he, unfortunately, because of the racism he experienced, he tried very hard to establish his own business, but he ended up to make money, sold his essentially his
Right.
IP, his inventions to people like Westinghouse and
Yeah.
Alexander Graham Bell,
Right.
so he could make a living.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I was slightly wrong. The graphic novel is Grandville. And though it is a steampunk science fiction adventure set in the same time period with anthropomorphic creatures, but it is not based on Granville, and it is Grand with a D Ville. So oops, not quite. But so you are, as far as I know, the only person doing that character. In comics or anywhere else, really. I knew of the character vaguely. But not it was really cool to make him a main protagonist, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it balances out. I think your trio, you've got your basic white guy, but then you've got your female character and your one person of color, and it's like, oh good, one of each. That's a nice little trio,
Yeah.
rather than
Well,
a token character and then everyone else in the main team being
Yeah.
white men
yeah.
or what
Well,
have you.
well,
Yeah.
sometimes I love Granville because sometimes he's the smartest person in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and and Samuel is not resentful of that. What
Right.
I didn't even realize at the time until I look back over all I've written with Boston Metaphysical is Samuel plays a very important part in that he's a man of two worlds himself. He came from essentially middle class, uh, happened to get fairly well educated, but he married into the upper class. So he
Right.
straddles this fence all the time. But what he is able to do is create a safe space for people like Granville and Caitlin and others like them to thrive.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what he does. He's sort of like the Kirk to the Spock and the McCoy here.
Right.
Um,
That's good.
between
Well,
between
that's good.
between the three of them. And
Right.
they all have different strengths, they all have different weaknesses, but when they work together, they're a pretty powerful trio. And if
Right.
you read on into the sequels, I do add another team member later on.
Ah, okay.
And
Very cool.
yeah, her name is Alma Bryant, and you meet her for the first time in the second sequel called The Spirit of Rebellion. And she's an amateur inventor and scientist herself, African American woman who is an accountant by trade. And as you scroll down in volume 2, you'll see her as the team grows and changes. This
Right.
is a page from MJ Erickson for the new 10-pager that's going into this volume.
Gotcha. All right. The Ghost of Carlton House. All right. Beautiful. All right, and then this is some of the prose prelude story. They're both prelude stories, correct? The prose novels.
They're both prequels to
Yes.
to volume 1. Storm of
prequels,
Secrets
yeah.
is a novel, and Prelude is an anthology.
Very cool. Beautiful. And CD or USB flash drive of The Ghost Ship, the audio drama. I mean, at this point, you've kind of done everything with this brand. I mean, you've got the audio.
Basically said, who needs television? And you'll do everything.
Exactly. I was going to say, except the OG concept, right? And it's still not a television show. It's still not a serial, a film serial of any kind yet. But I will say, as it is perfectly adapted as a comic. Like, there's nothing about the comic that doesn't feel like a comic. But when reading the entirety of this first story arc, it definitely felt like it could have been a movie. Like, it felt, and actually, one question for you: it definitely felt like, you mentioned it was a pilot. Did you, for all 6 issues, did that grow and expand and adapt into 6 issues where there were many of the additional stories that were like kind of sub stories that were added to that first arc that weren't in the pilot? Because it did feel much fuller than you could ever squeeze into a single pilot.
Oh yeah. You absolutely. There were some ideas I had for additional episodes that made its way into the different issues of the original 6-issue miniseries to enrich that and enlarge that. And so we could watch the characters grow and learn. And in fact, the audio drama is actually loosely based on another TV episode I wrote years ago, and I just took some of the basic stuff from it because I had to adapt it. And there's no visuals and audio, so there was a lot of things I had to change. But the basic premise was the same. So I've been able to repurpose many of my original story ideas in some form or another.
Right.
Good.
All right. Very cool. And this is the volume 2, which collects the 4 standalone sequels.
Yes. And it also has a bonus story as well.
Ah, okay. There you go.
Yes.
So gotta get them all. And the first
extra.
2. Yes. And the first 2 issues of Mystery of Pikes Peak. So this is the outside of the standalone sequels. Would you call this the third series, then third volume, or third series?
This would be the beginning of the third volume. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
That cover number 2 is just
isn't that cool?
Yeah, those are done by Angela Wu, and she just did a bang up job.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and a couple comments. I've been looking at this page. I've been negligent of the comments, but in terms of the foil stamping, yes, the title and the light. Why stop? Why pick?
Why?
It's foil stamp the whole thing. It's expensive maybe, and practicality too. You have to find out what the printer says in terms of, because I know when people do foil stamping or foils or any sort of spot coverage of any kind, you go to the printer and you're like, I want it here, 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 and here, and they're like, oh, that's not really how it works. It's like there are practical reasons where it's like the printer won't do it very well if you pick these specific parts. You got to pick a different color or something. So we'll figure that out. And of course, Jessica, I think once again the cover is just perfect. I think that's the main cover because again, I was negligent on these. All right. Yeah. Moving on. Here's a full list of rewards. So the digital edition of this version of the graphic novel, $12. And this is like at least 160 page. How much is it?
It'll be 164 pages. Yeah.
164 pages. So great. $12 for 164 pages, guys. You're paying $15 for like 110 pages most of the time. So amazing price for that. Digital volume 1 and volume 2. So your total digital catch up right there, just about. $22, only $10 for volume 2. That's pretty freaking amazing. Softback limited edition for $25, and you get the digital. The digital looks like that still gets thrown in, which I always love it when that happens. A lot of people have very strong feelings about like shipping getting charged after the fact or things like that these days. My strongest feeling is like when you have to pick between the digital and the physical, and I'm like, come on. Like if I'm buying the physical, like throw the PDF in there. Don't be stingy on that part. All right, and digital bundle, and this is going to include the first 2 issues of volumes 3. So here's the full catch up is going to be $32, and then the starter kit. And walk us through. This is physical, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's all physical. And that's for people that just they're brand new to the series, like graphic novels, like prose, want to get their toes wet for, a reasonable amount of money. They get the physical thing in their hands. And people seem to enjoy that. It's a good way to start. And then later, absolutely. And then if they find they like it later, that they can come back in other Kickstarters or see me at a con and pick up, other stuff.
Absolutely. Quick question. When you have these 2 different images side by side, are you just showing them the different devices they can read it on, or does this designate 2 different things?
I know if you read in the description, the gentleman who did that's to let you know that you're going to be your name is on the Kickstarter thank you all.
Gotcha. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah.
That's what that is.
Gotcha. It's like trying to decipher hieroglyphics. Like, so what does that one mean? What does that stand for?
Yeah.
All right. So then we've got, and then hardback of special edition volume 1. So this is what you're really here for in terms of what this special edition is. And that's $40 for the physical hardback edition, hopefully with spot foil. And I'm pretty sure we'll get there. All right. Digital bundle. So comics and prose, everything digital, the whole ball of wax, $42. That's really amazing. And now we're getting to our little metal cards. Special Detective Brass level. And that includes the hardcover edition as well?
Correct.
Oh, wow. So that's a cheap add-on. Nice.
Yeah.
And the PDF. Beautiful.
And the PDF. And your name.
And the PDF.
And
your name
in the credits.
If you want
and your name.
That's completely
if
optional.
You want it. Right. That's always part of the
the survey.
Not the pledge. The survey, thank you.
The survey, yeah.
All right. And premium digital package includes all 8 episodes of the audio drama. Okay, see, I keep jumping the gun saying it's the whole package in digital, and then we keep adding more shit to it. It's amazing because you have so much stuff to add. So now we're at $52, and this includes all the audio drama as well. And then new to Boston, all the soft cover stuff for $62. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. And then we've got the copper level. All right, so here's where it starts getting Special Detective copper level for the copper card instead of the brass card. And that's going to take you to $65. Oh, yes. And then, of course, for retailers or what have you, or you just have a lot of friends that you want to hand your copies off to, 4 copies for $72. So that's 50% off. So that's a great buy. If you have any reason to get more than one, get that. That is the way to do it, because you're basically paying for 2 and getting 4. Yeah. Then we've got a new to Boston hardback. So all the catch-up stuff. Now, obviously, the single issue is not in hard, so you're getting the hardback main one, but the others,
The
there are
rest
no
are
other hardback.
so, yeah,
Right,
that's the only hardback. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect. And that's a 75. And then the black level for the business card. What is it? Is it black platinum, black metal? How is this this one?
It's like it's a black finish, and it looks really cool.
Cool.
I bet.
It looks really cool.
And that's $80. That's everything in physical with your amazing black finish metal detective ID card. And then nothing but books. So here we go. Just all the bloody books, including the coloring book, which you haven't even seen until this moment. You are $115 for the whole ball of wax right there. That is very, very cool. And this one, right? This is one of the novels, is it?
That's the anthology, Prelude.
That's the anthology, Prelude. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. All right. And then all things Boston Metaphysical Society, all things, $190. Oh, even some merch. Oh, son of a gun. Wow. Okay.
You get the pins, you get the flash drive, you get the CD, you get all the books.
That's great.
All the
And
physical,
there's
all the
also
digital.
some,
Incredible.
yeah, and then there's some additional short stories that you get the digital version of that aren't in Prelude.
Oh, amazing. All right. So,
then
10 years of history, folks.
Yeah. And then the add-ons, which are down below.
Down below. Here we go.
Here we
Yep,
go.
you can add on the cards,
You can
of course.
add on the whole set of the 3 business cards. We also have the dirigible bookmark set.
Beautiful. And also brass, copper, and stainless steel. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then you can also order the pins, the entire pin set, and the USB flash drive, which is the size of a credit card.
That's cool.
Good stuff.
Comes with a velvet pouch. Beautiful. All right. And of course, the very long list of names that are the team.
Oh yeah.
At this point. And the Ghost of Carlton House team, which is the special 10-pager. Oh yeah, and how'd you get Troy as your letterer? Where did you meet him? Because he's an old hand.
Yes, he is. That was kind of fun. Before, I think we actually started as a webcomic, sort of, kind of. Okay. And a good friend of mine who has also now moved on to much bigger and better, had a table at an Image convention up in San Francisco when Image still had conventions.
Yeah.
And she says, okay, you can take this little corner of my table and just hand out postcards and talk to people. So that's what I did. And Troy came by, and she also told me she'd been in the business. I'd learned, she was a mentor to me. And she says, okay, bring scripts and whatever in case publishers, because at that time I was still thinking of going to a publisher to do all of this instead of doing it myself. And Troy came by the table to say hi to her, and she says, oh, Troy likes to do indie comics. Maybe he'll do your lettering. And he said, let me see your script. So I handed him a script. He leafed through and he says, yeah, I'll do it. And he's been with me ever since. He's been with me since the very, very beginning. And
the lesson here, kids, is to find a mentor, go to cons, and just be brave.
Yes.
And just
find
just
that person
people
who's like, I feel like he just wanted to make sure you had a finished script, and he's like, oh yeah, you wrote it, great, let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because I've had several excellent mentors within comics publishing, and I wouldn't be here without them. I mean, they were critical. They've been amazing, and can't thank them enough. Other than I do mention one in the introduction to the to the hardback. Dave Elliott, who's been around a long time as well. I'm sure he's going to hate me saying that. But yeah, it's a fun little story that I mentioned in the introduction. And then when I was first writing this and I was learning how to do sound effects and everything, he's in England, he was in the UK in a cafe, and we were emailing back and forth sound effects to each other. And apparently he was also like sounding them out loud in the cafe. And people were like going, dude, what are you doing? 'Cause he's going like, and making all sorts of weird noises and typing and emailing them to me, and then we're going back and forth as I'm sitting
He's
in
trying to figure out
California.
how to type it out, right? What are the phonetics
Right.
of this
The
sound? How do I
phonetics
put
the
this into a
phonetics
word?
of
Yeah.
it as we're going back and forth, he's sitting in the UK in a cafe and me
Right.
sitting in California, and so, yeah, he actually, brought in my original colorists, Gloria Kali and Fariza Kamaputra.
Okay.
And I know
Cool.
Fariza has gone on to bigger and better. I don't know about Gloria, but
Okay.
Stuff.
yeah. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of people, and I learned something from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have John there in the chat. Letterers forever, writers never. Come on, John. And of course, his when he first came on, rock on, and his wine. Thank you, John. But I want to see you drinking some wine one of these shows. I want you to be like putting in the chat. What are you drinking? I don't think you're living a sober lifestyle. I know you drink other things. Drink some wine. Tell me what you're drinking. Let's get. I want to rub off on you here. It's time. Let's have you share that. All right. And what other people say? Just some amazing quotes from people. Women and people of color take center stage in the Boston Metaphysical Society comic, written by Madeleine Holly Rosing, with art by Emily Hu, inspired by fantasy and the art of storytelling. Holly Rosing uses her imagination to create a fantastic story that is both well written and fearless. There's that fearless word again. Maybe I should have used it in the first place. If you have a taste for an intelligent, well-written, elegantly illustrated, award-winning independent book, you can't go wrong with Boston Metaphysical Society. And last but not least, this very inventive series posits a totally believable steampunk world that is populated by appealing characters who act and react in believable manners to the extraordinary events that swirl around them. I really agree with that one. That is very true. I think you have a knack for giving just the right amount of veneer of verisimilitude, of something that like we can latch onto as like real characters. Not that any of us knew anyone from the 1800s, but like what we think they might have been like. And, having that inhabit a largely real world that is still this alt history. Some of the science has gone in different directions, hence the steampunk part. And obviously then the existence of the supernatural being something that is largely accepted and crops up quite a bit is also the interesting thing there. So definitely agree with that. And hey, nominee Best Comic from 2014, Best Comic Graphic Novel. And of course, Boston Metaphysical Society has been around. And any other stretch goals? So we're on stretch goal number 4. Oh, so yeah, we are close to that foil stamping. Okay, we're getting foil stamping, but the others are locked. They have not been revealed. So we will have to wait.
I've got two more planned. Okay. And so we will see. Like we said, we have 21 days to go. So we got some time.
You got some time, and it'll keep ticking up there. All right. I'm going to stop that share right there. And anything else you think people need to know about the campaign before we move on to DeWine?
I think we've probably covered it all.
All right. We'd like
Beautiful.
to hear that.
All right.
And it's going to be a beautiful book. It's just going to be beautiful.
It certainly looks like it. I mean, that cover's amazing. It gets foil stamping, and then you've got that nice little embedded bookmark, and who knows what the next 2 stretch goals are. So yeah, this is going to be a beautiful book. All right, Dallas. Since I technically went first yesterday, I was solo. You get to go first today.
All right, let's do it. All right, so first of all, I have to speak to this sort of, your ability to kind of weave these seemingly disparate kind of elements together, and there's a certain harmony that happens with this work. Usually, if I'm seeing those historical fiction kind of reimaginings of characters like Tesla, and I tune out very easily. But that's usually because they're one-dimensional. It's usually because they are just sort of placeholders for some historical kind of academic theme or platform. And I think what you've managed to do here is really give these characters backbone, some interesting personalities and quirks, particularly with your dual protagonist here, their relationship, as you establish it in the beginning, she being the daughter of one of his failed compatriots, for lack of a better phrase.
Don't want to give it away.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And I think you do a really good job of creating depth from point one, which is really difficult to do. There's great backstory with the characters. There's great depth. And in terms of those disparate elements, like the steampunk thing, I'm not generally into. But the way you've managed to kind of allow it to be less about the steam and more about the punk outsider kind of get it done grit is really kind of fascinating.
Thank you.
I knew I wanted a wine that was a blend because it mirrors the sort of seamless blending you've managed to do with all this stuff. And originally I thought red, but I think a red for me with this is too on the nose. I decided I wanted either.
That.
Say it again.
I said, "Oh, stop that!" He's always taking the piss out of my choosing reds all the time. He's like, "It's too on the nose." I'm like, "You mother."
Oh, shut up!
I like red. I like red.
He's like, the thing Dave's gonna pull out, that's just too on the nose.
Yeah,
like, let me give you the more subtle answer.
So I knew I wanted a blend. I originally thought an orange wine because when I think of steampunk, for some reason my mind automatically goes to orange wines, and contacts. And then I thought maybe a rosé, but again, rosé is just sort of generally aren't interesting enough for my palate, unfortunately. Sorry, rosé lovers. But I knew
that's what I get for having you go first. I know. But to be fair, if he knew, if I had went first, he'd still just be taking the piss out of my choice. I just would have gone first.
100%. So I went with a white blend. I wanted something that was going to be fresh. Definitely needs to be dry because I think you do deal with some pretty heavy subject matter here, although it is still really fun. It is adventurous. It is, it's dark. It's funny sometimes. It's just a great blend all around. I wanted something that I knew was going to be, really drinkable. And in terms of the blend, there's a grape called Grosseto, and it's a really popular
I think it's
blending grape.
Oh, I think.
Yeah, it's Grosseto
like
or
a K.
Well, sometimes it's written with the H, sometimes it's written without the H. So Grosseto
gotcha.
or Grosseto. And I needed something that had that sort of bitter, citrusy thing, crisp, medium acidity. And I stumbled upon this bottle, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was a bender. I was just out trying wines because I hadn't had a wine in a while, and I found this guy. It is the Ruffino Orvieto Classico, very accessible wine. And again, I think your piece
hold that up for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think your
I've
piece
heard of Ruffino. I've heard of Ruffino. Yeah.
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 It's a really
Nice.
it's about anywhere between 15 and $20. It's not going to set you back too much. It is very drinkable. It is fantastic when chilled. It stands up well to really spicy things. I think your piece here is really spicy. It's also really crisp. I really, honestly, I have to say, a bit of a side note here. The first issue, it just hooked me completely. Like it just kind of it rang all the bells without me thinking about it too much or overthinking it or thinking my way out of enjoying it, because that's sometimes my big thing is I can think my way out of enjoying something, and it didn't really leave room for that. I was invested in the characters. So yeah, I went with this Rufino blend Orvieto Classico 2021. You can pick it up at any of your finer retail establishments and supermarkets, I think they're called.
Yes.
Gelson's. So yeah, that's my guy.
Beautiful. All right. So yeah, that one
Great.
should be relatively easy for most people to find.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine not so much.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna give my best bet for everyone of where to find this and how to find it, whether you're on the East Coast or West Coast of the US. If you're not in the US, you're on your own, and best of luck to you. But so much to mirror some of Dallas's sentiments and to add a little bit of my own, you know, this we just mentioned, or I just mentioned before, that you do an amazing job of having this sort of veneer of verisimilitude in this, nevertheless, very pulptastic. It's very fun. It's not a like action-packed story, but it moves. Like it flows very, very well. There's never a moment where you're not absorbed by it, and you give all your characters a lot, like layers. Even the characters that are by comparison to the main characters, kind of they're types, or meant to be. Like they have certain things, like Tesla, where he has a very specific kind of purpose in every scene that he's in. Like he's giving off a vibe, and it's very much a vibe, but you can never quite get a pin on his motivations. Right. Yeah. There's a lot behind the scenes of all these characters. Same with, I'm going to forget his name, but it's the father of our main character's ex or deceased wife.
Jonathan Weldsmore.
Jonathan Weldsmore. Weldsmore is one of those. Yes. And he's one of those characters where, especially in a story like this, and when you first meet him, you know, he's that uptight, you know, upper class elitist, you know, seems to be like he has one track. Everything has to be quote unquote proper. Everything outside of that, he has no time for. But what the reasons he's saying what he's saying, and when he sort of the ebb and flow of his antagonism to our main character is also something that is more complicated than it looks at first blush. And the more you learn from him and the more they interact, the more you're like, I don't know what this guy's going to do next. You can't get a pin on him very easily, or his motivations, or what, you know, of the feelings that are, or, you know, his history and why he's doing what he's doing now. So there always tends to be layers to these even side characters that, well, they have definitely an aesthetic to them, a vibe that is first and foremost. As you get to know more of them, or as you see more of them, and some of these characters you don't see that much of, only a couple scenes here or there, but you still get that sensation from them. So I did go with the red. I needed something that had that kind of complexity to it, that had those layers to it, and a lot of whites. It's hard. I think an orange, to Dallas's point, with the he said orange cyberpunk. I think of orange with like post-apocalyptic, which isn't interesting. But when you said orange,
come on now, man. There's nothing more on the nose than that. Come on, okay, dude.
It does though. It feels that way to me, man. So. But to the same degree to cyberpunk, because cyberpunk is it's an alt history, but there's always, you know, cyberpunk is kind of like our own world where technology is both a boon and a destroyer, right? It always comes at a cost. It always comes like, we don't handle it well. We don't know how to do it in a way that doesn't destroy lives. So technology always is that double-edged sword. And so steampunk always has that as well. There's an element of dystopia to any sort of alt science world. Because we don't have a grip on our technology, which mirrors, you know, you can call it a dystopia. even though it's more just the kind of world we live in today. You know, AI, anyone, here we go. But I also think that for me, having those layers, having that complexity, and to Dallas's point of he wanted a blend of how you're blending all these things together. And for me, what I went with a wine that was both on the nose, on the palate. There were layers in terms of like, it was savory. It was like baking putting a dish together where all these different flavors have to come together. If you have too simple of a dish, it's just not that good. It's like, it's fine. It might be edible, but you're not going to be impressed by a food dish that doesn't have a lot of stuff going on with it. So for me, I went with a grape that is, it's predominantly a blending grape in Europe, but it's kind of coming to its own in the States as a single varietal. It grows really well in California. It is Petit Verdot, VRDOT. And this is something where it's a grape that's always in Bordeaux blends over in France, but always in small amounts. They really use it as a blending grape to add a little something extra to their big Bordeaux blends.
One more time there, Dave. A little further back. There you go.
A little further
back.
There it is.
There we
so
go.
Petit Verdot. This particular bottle, the one that I was drinking, this is from Grissini in Santa Barbara. It is one of my favorite vineyards. This is not necessarily the bottle I recommend because, one, it's not affordable. It is about $75 a bottle. And it's also members only, so you have to belong to the club of Grissini in Santa Barbara. So that's not what I recommend. But what I will say...
All right, humble brag. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. I've been sitting on this bottle for a while, so hey, trust me, this is not affordable for me. This is not an everyday wine, but Petit Verdot can be everyday.
That's true.
Whether it's Paso Robles, whether it's Temecula, Santa Barbara, there are lots of regions in California that are doing single varietal Petit Verdot bottlings. Between like $20 to $30. So why Petit? And then on the East Coast, guys, Virginia has claimed Petit Verdot as its own. It's one of the big reds over there, and it grows gorgeously. So if you're on the East Coast, if you go into a wine shop somewhere, you probably will not find any Petit Verdot in the grocery store, Virginia wines in the grocery store, unless you're in Virginia. But if you're anywhere else on the East Coast, just go into a wine shop. They will probably have a Virginia wine selection. Alcohol distribution in the U.S. is a pain in the ass, and like we do not get East Coast wines in our wine shops here on the West Coast. So we have our own. You guys kind of have your own. And for you guys, go into a wine shop, ask for a Petit Verdot, ask for a Virginia Petit Verdot if you can, because that will probably be the better version for all the experimentation that's going on with Petit Verdot on the East. But why Petit Verdot? This is a very purple. It's a very like violet lavender color. The lighting in here it makes it look darker than it is, but you can kind of see when I swirl at the rim at the top when you gets a little light coming through it. It's very purpley, but in this light lilac kind of way. And it is so floral. So even the sense of it is just layer upon layer upon layer. It's like a perfumed wine, but in this not in a way that's like too much and like you have to back off from it. Like it's just, you can sniff this thing for like an hour and just like keep getting more out of it. It's just this layered perfume, and Petit Verdot is known for that. It's just an incredibly floral perfumed wine, but it also has an edge. The reason in Europe it's mostly a blending grape is it is also on the palate. It's harsh. It's got a bite. It's got tannins galore. You have to grow it really well to find a balance. And then usually it needs to be like barrel aged for a little bit of extra time before they bottle it and release it. And if you can sit on a Petit Verdot, if you can find one that's already got, like this is a 2017 bottle right here. And if you can find, like, I wouldn't buy a 2022 Petit Verdot right now. Like try and find a 2020 or 2021 at the youngest. And you'd be doing okay. But get a couple years of age on that thing if you can. But that harshness, honestly, is a part of this world too, and a part of this comic, because this is not, it's got the layers, it's got the complexity, it's got the pulptasticness to it, but then it's got some serious real drama. It's got class warfare, it's got the supernatural, it's got the loss of, like, our characters are all suffering from different losses or hardships. And these losses and hardships are like very, some of them are like very Oliver Twist, in that way of like, it's like, this is that era of time in, in this case, it's in Boston, but it's got that almost like filthy city, London class warfare feel that you get in something
Yeah.
like that Oliver Twist. So you have a lot of real, very significant drama going on there. And this is not a happy place to live for most people. It's like
No.
everyone's kind of getting by to the best of their ability. And
Yeah.
so, and then on the palate as well, with that harshness, it is savory. So it's floral and it's savory more than it is fruit forward. It is not a particularly fruit forward wine. It has some. I'm not saying there's no fruit to it, but it's mostly, you're going to get lots of herbaceousness. You're going to get lots of florals. And then you're going to get this gentle blue to purple fruit that just kind of like balances it out and gives it a little something pleasant. But it's a thinker. It's one that you got to sip and savor and really kind of be like, what is this that I'm drinking? And so it's a glass to sit with. And I felt like that is really what I needed for something like Boston Metaphysical, because of everything going on in it and because of all its many layers as well. So Petit Verdot, again, on the East Coast, Virginia. If you're on the West Coast, you'll find it. Go into your wine shop, ask for it. They'll have at least one single bottling of that somewhere. And most people do not release a single varietal Petit Verdot unless it's worth it, because it's not a hugely popular wine. Most people don't know about it. So it's not like an instant seller or a natural seller. So if they're making it, it's because they're passionate about it and they think they got something. So go in there, find it, and you will probably have something good. Yeah.
I will definitely
All
go
right.
look that up. Definitely.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Please.
All right. And before we get to,
did Dave tell you? Go ahead, Dave.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I did want to one comment real quick. Richard Fairgray joined us. Pretty sure last night's wine was $50 a bottle, so I think maybe Dave is a very fancy man. Richard, last night was $12.99. Okay, come on now. I'm doing okay on balancing these out. I try and make sure I don't pimp a lot of like, hey, comics guys who are like
That's
on
true.
crowdfunding
Yeah,
to pay for your comic, go buy this $100 bottle of wine. I know my audience here, right? All right. So yes, Dallas, go ahead and introduce this section.
No, thank Madeleine. Did Dave give you our little a little pitch here to bring a comic that you are, you want people to know about, or you want to pitch, or you want to hawk?
Yes,
and,
yes.
a beverage to
Well,
pair it with.
I sent it to you, right?
Yes.
Or did I need to bring it up?
No.
I don't even know
Well,
how
you're
to
going
do
to
that.
talk about it. I can bring it up and share it. Let me open the PDF, but go ahead and talk about it, please.
Yeah.
Let me remember. This is Our Faceless Fears, right?
This is Lamp Black.
Oh, Lamp Black. Sorry.
Or you can do Our Faceless Fears. You sent me Lamp
You
Black
can do
first,
both if
and
you
you might
want.
have switched to our. But you know what? Same author. So if you want to pimp both, go for both.
Uh, let me refresh my memory here.
Absolutely.
Because I actually wrote a review on this over at Fanbase. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Okay. So I do a lot of interviews, so sometimes I get shots fired. Pablo Pepino is one of my favorite artists, and
Yes.
he did Skies of Fire, and he also came out for Camille's Lamp Black,
Yep.
and one of the I so I was already biased for it because I love Pablo's work. Yeah, there we go. Um, and so just picking up anything of Pablo's is always fun.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the story itself is about Mabel, who is referred to as an ink girl, which means she has the magical ability to manipulate a dangerous substance known as ink black. And it's a substance that must be contained and treated with great care. If it gets loose as ink blots, it can manifest itself into a murderous monster. However, in the hands of an ink girl, it can be created to create art which literally comes alive. But there is a danger in possessing this type of creativity. And her mother, Mabel's mother, was also an ink girl, but she doesn't do that anymore because of the danger. And there's been prejudice, and decades before, or even hundreds
Yeah.
of years before, they were basically considered the ink girls were considered witches, and they were burned and chased out of town. And yeah, this is not a happy world either. But in the first three issues, Mabel saves a young man who's being attacked by an ink blot monster, but she isn't aware that he's the son of a powerful magnet, and he's also been deaf since birth. and he's estranged from his father, and he joins the military, and they write to each other because they're both kind of lonely people, and he's ostracized because of his deafness and not doing what his father wants, and her being an ink girl. And I think what I really liked about this story the most is that, obviously it just deals with themes such as discrimination, misogyny, but also how the weaponization of creativity is explored. And
Yes.
I think that that's the most important part of the story, and something we all need to be aware of.
100%. And it
So yeah,
is, I mean,
Camille
Patino's art is
did a great
crazy.
job, and yeah,
yes.
and I guess not being a wine aficionado quite like you guys are, I kind of know what I like and I know what I don't like, and I hate fruity, heavy wines, so I
Yeah.
always go towards dry, whether it be white or red. My preference is always going to be red. Um, but I think probably I'll have to stick with my favorite, which was it's a Spanish red uh, from Montecillo in Rioja, Spain.
Okay. Yep.
Uh, it's just great. It's nice and dry, but yet it has just like a hint of like cherry and plum in the
Yes.
background.
Yes.
So it's multi-dimensional
Yes.
without being overwhelmingly like this cloying fruity. And
Yes.
either, you drink it alone, which is great, or we actually use it in our marinara. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
it
Oh,
makes the
nice.
marinara.
Yes.
Great depth.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people, when they cook with wine, they're always like, "Oh, just use the cheap stuff." But it's like sometimes it's
No,
worth
no, no,
using
no,
a
no,
little
no.
bit better stuff. Yeah.
No, because we would usually buy like a cheap Trader Joe's Cote de Rhone for the
Yeah.
marinara. And then
Yeah.
I think one time we ran out and I said, well, we already have this Spanish. We like it. Let's just use it. And then we taste it was like, oh my God. It was it's like using cheap chocolate in a ganache. You
Exactly.
don't
Yes.
want to use the
Exactly.
cheap
Yes.
chocolate in a ganache.
Yes.
Now if we're talking chocolate, then we could have a real conversation. But
Oh, all
Well, I
right.
was going to
Hey,
say,
I'm your guy. I'm your guy, Madeleine.
yes. Well, we were going to say, we like, I know me and Dallas are both this way, but like for me, I'm always like, 85 to 90% dark chocolate is just my jam. I love it nice and dark. I make my own chocolate ice cream, which has 4 times
wow.
the chocolate as your standard chocolate ice cream in it.
Great.
And I buy this like Peruvian Criollo chocolate cocoa powder to use
Yeah.
in the ice cream, along with then melting some of like an 85% dark chocolate bar in there to go with it. And it's the best. I mean, I make this thing. It's literally, I almost never don't have a batch made because I just don't want to go like through a week of life without it. And it's so good. And you don't realize how good baking, making, cooking something is with quality ingredients until you've done it, which is not
Oh
to say
yeah.
do it all the time, because yes, that could break your bank or depending.
Yeah.
And
But
Rioja,
a
yeah,
special
Yeah.
occasion, it's like I would always recommend if you're going to make a special occasion chocolate cake at home to use like say Valrhona cocoa powder for the
yeah,
cake.
Absolutely.
yeah,
And if you're going to make a ganache, I would recommend the Schaffenburger,
there you go.
bittersweet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
For that, for chocolate chip cookies that everybody's eating, Ghirardelli is completely fine.
It really is. It really
It
is. You
really
can't go
is, and
wrong.
I do a mix between dark and semi-sweet in my chocolate
Yeah.
chips, so you get, the sweet cuts the bitter, and yeah,
See,
so
my
Yeah.
my unfortunately, my chocolate addiction is can gear towards the hot chocolate, the sipping chocolate. That is
oh,
Oh
the
yeah.
sipping
just
chocolate,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
oh
that's
yeah,
too
yeah.
overwhelming for me, that just puts me on my ass, I can't
See, I lower the sugar content, and it is about it's about 85, 90 dark chocolate. And
You know,
all you need is
Madeleine,
about 3 tablespoons. All you need is about 3 tablespoons, if you're good.
have you ever tried that brewing chocolate, the Criollo or something like
I've
that?
seen it. I
Creole
have
brew.
not. I have not yet. I have seen it. I have not tried it. Um, unfortunately, I do kind of have a sensitive stomach, so I have to watch the acid.
Right.
So
Right.
I have to be some of these things with a higher percent of chocolate. I was just like a little bit goes a long
Long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood there. And the good thing, just to let everyone know too about Rioja, I don't know how much a bottle that Rioja that you were using was, but it tends not to go too crazy because Rioja is still something
It's
that
not
has like
bad.
large production. Yeah.
It's not bad. You can probably get it between $20, $25 a bottle, so it's
Exactly. Yeah.
reasonable. You know, it's not out of control.
Right. So if you want to try cooking with it and try drinking with it, like most Rioja, unless you're going, and Rioja has different levels going all the way to like, I'm gonna forget if it's Gran Reserva for Rioja as well, but I think it is.
Yeah.
Gran Reserva.
I've had that. There's like the blue label and the black label, and I've had both.
Exactly.
They're both really good, but the black label is more expensive than the blue label.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you have your basic, you have your Reserva, you have your Gran Reserva, and even the basic stuff though, like Rioja has been making wine for a crazy amount of time, and it's in an era right now where they're really good. Like they're not doing terrible practices. They're making really, like, every wine country goes through these little ups and downs with like all the farmers start using crappy practices, and then the wine quality goes down, and then they gotta all quickly pivot and do something and like fix everything and make new laws and blah blah blah. But right now Rioja's a great region where it's affordable. It's almost always worth your while, no matter even the cheaper generic, like I think they literally call it Generico, is the lowest brand label, or quality label. And even the Generico is like, it's always worthwhile. And that's usually like $8.99 to $12.99 a bottle. And it's fantastic. Like you don't go wrong with Rioja. It's pretty ready, steady. So, all right, guys, I think that is everything for today. Once again, Boston Metaphysical Society special edition hardcover volume 1 on Kickstarter for 3 more weeks. So until April 18th. And Madeleine Holly Rosing. Rosing? Oh my God! Now I'm going to doubt myself. Rosing, thank you.
Rosing, you got it. You got it.
In the last time I said your name, I had to doubt myself. Dang it. But Madeleine, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a blast. Thank you everyone for watching.
Nice to meet you, Dallas.
Absolutely.
You too.
My second Dave Baxter.
All right. Good night for now, everybody. We are signing off. See you tomorrow.